officer at Soundbites 11. So that's awesome, because when you're working at a small company, I totally can hear her. You are chief everything officer, you're your secretary, you're the CEO. So you have to wear so many hats in a day. But personal branding and image have really become the buzzwords, especially from the last 6 to 12 months. These are the ones that are becoming really in focus. It is how you present yourself to the world. And we need to have effective personal branding to differentiate ourselves from the competition and allow us to build trust with prospective clients and employers. Soundari is an organizational consultant, business storytelling coach, a faculty, a mentor, a facilitator, a visual thinker, and a speaker. She helps leaders and teams drive business outcomes, build a personal brand, and be more human at work through storytelling. And when she's not working with clients and on calls with her family or friends or reading books, you'll find her at a tennis court or working on a pottery wheel. Welcome, Soundari. It's absolute pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Sukirti, and the entire team at Sipping Thoughts. I'm absolutely excited to be here, and what an amazing experience and platform that you're creating. I'm like so thrilled to add and be part of your group and your platform. I have been listening to a few of the episodes over the last year, at least, I must say, from the time Nija mentioned about your platform to me. And I heard Hema's episode last episode. It was fabulous how you are able to draw the kind of conversation. So I'm very excited.
Oh, so thank you so much. And for those of you who have not heard Hema Hathangari's presentation, please do go back and watch it. Very, very inspirational. I just loved it. So just putting a thumbs up out there. But I want to come back to now, you coach so many people. And what do you see that the biggest challenge, and we always come back to women, that women are facing?
Yeah. You told about my big, hairy, audacious goal that I have, which is to help leaders and teams drive business outcomes, build a brand through storytelling and also through my coaching practice. And I want to focus on one aspect of it, which is around how we are all trying to manage work and life now. And this has been our central theme for everybody over the last, like, say, 2 3 years. If it was always there before, in 2 3 years it's definitely come more into the spotlight. And so a lot of the stories and the conversations are around how are you defining success for yourself, how are you managing technology, how are you looking at building support networks like this platform around you for at work, at home, how are you traveling or not traveling or relocating, changing your career track, doing those zigzags in your career literally. And how are you collaborating with your partner, if there's a partner, to figure out all this together. And I think in that, there's definitely that some bit of women orientation that comes out, because certain cultures have managed to figure it out slightly differently than certain other cultures, and that is coming really to the forefront now. And I'm thinking about, just even in terms of building networks, say even at work. I'm thinking about my own journey in the early 90s. During my days with ANZ, I had to deal with a conflict between maintaining a relationship with a client and some of the credit norms and risk practices that the bank had. And in my style at that time, I was like, I said, okay, if I talk to the credit team, they're going to say no. So my initial path was to believe we couldn't organize those lines of credit for the client. So I kept mulling about it, and I was stewing over the problem myself, and I must have lost so many weeks of sleepless nights trying to figure out, you want to be there for the client, but the bank has certain norms. And then finally I did reach out to the corporate team, to the cash management team, to the product team and all, and they really worked together to make it happen within the credit rules, but they worked for the client. And I was just thinking, why I tap into my ecosystem sooner? They were all there. And we tend to sometimes do this solo journey. I think so. With a lot of the conversations, it's about how do you build these networks around yourself. If you're a founder, how do you find a co-founder maybe who has complementary skill sets? What do they bring to the table to what you're willing to let go, and so on and so forth? And I think these are the kind of things. And some of it, I was reading this Business Insider article about some people who chose to be stay-at-home dads during the pandemic. And the way they framed the conversation was very different from what you might hear when say
When
a
a woman
woman.
does it.
So I'll just read out a couple of sentences. He says, I felt a urge to spend more time with my family when my son was young. And when my twin daughters were born, the desire became even more stronger. I can see the rewards are visible. I don't know if I'll go back to the corporate world. I love where I am. And I advise parents to enjoy your kids and make memories. You have the rest of your life to work. And I was just thinking, I have never heard and any woman who took a break from work frame it that way. We
So
ended
I
up
think
being
we
very
need to
apologetic.
learn here and see. But when you work in Hong Kong, but do you see these issues being global, or are they the same everywhere?
I want to say at some level people are the same everywhere, and I used to say this even for when we were talking about say B2B sales, business to business sales. When you go to a client call, ultimately there's a person at the other end, so you're connecting with the person. So always our connects are with the person. Having said that, each location, and I know you've lived and worked in different parts of the world, and I'm sure a lot of our audience as well have. Each location brings its own nuances. I mean, one of the things when I came into Hong Kong was, of course, the language. Cantonese does open a lot more doors for you than otherwise. And I remember going into my initial meetings with clients. You have to give your visiting cards with two hands, and you like wait for the client to just you are doing those social conversation, chit chat or whatever to get to know the client, and they would just cut to the chase and say, "Okay, tell me what you have to offer. What is the pricing?" And you're not sometimes prepared for it.
No, I totally agree. I used to travel a lot to Finland, and we as Americans are used to so much chit chat. They'd be like, "All right, open the laptop, let's start working."
Yeah. And I
So
can see Dr. Vandana talking about local culture. Exactly that. How do you then localize and customize? So you
your
want to
message.
customize to your audience, but you need to localize. I was running this session on business storytelling, which had a whole bunch of HR folks attending from different organizations. And I mean, all of us love Steve Jobs as a great storyteller, right? So I was giving a couple of examples for Steve Jobs and all that. And after the session was over, somebody from a telecom company here, he walked up to me and he said, Soundari, I really get it. He's an inspirational person. We all look up to him. But are there any local leaders that are equally as inspirational? And that was again a aha moment for me. I took a step back and I actually started curating stories and created this video series called Handshake. That is back when the time you could shake hands,
Mhm.
and talking about how people could connect through stories, and got a lot of local leaders involved in that program. So,
Fantastic. So tell
yeah,
us
that is
now, why personal branding and why is it becoming such a catchphrase?
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't I segue into getting some of our audience also linked in into this? So I'm going to take a minute and just get my screen open. So just give me a minute.
And I would like, until you get your screen open, I'd love to hear from the audience. What do they think is personal branding and image? It's a good question to throw out because I think we're hearing this word everywhere these days. And so I would love to hear from all of you what your thoughts are on personal branding. Is it bragging? Is it being too out there?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're going to do in this thing. So I've just put up it's a polling thing called menti.com. So you can just either go and type menti.com and type the code that comes in, or you can scan the QR code.
I think the
And
code is getting hidden a little bit. So
okay, hold on one minute. Is this better now?
no, the top part is getting a little bit hidden.
Mm.
So I think the code is three. I can't read it because
Oh,
there's
you
more
mean the code
coming.
number? The code number.
Yeah,
Okay, it's
yeah.
8840.
I'm just gonna
If you
type
can
it
help
in.
me, just type it on the chat.
8840.
0402.
And this is Mentimeter, MENT.
Menti.com. Menti.com. I see what you're meaning.
Yes, we are not able to see
That top
the
bit, yeah.
link.
Yeah, I can just move to the actual question. So the first question that I want to hear from the audience, and I know we probably have a very diverse group participate. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear about personal branding? If you can just type in a word.
So we are hearing Sneha is saying communication, Pragya is saying consistency, and Natasha is asking me to repeat the code. The code is 88400402. Ashmita says image, Kritika says positioning, Dr. Vandana says values, Amita says confidence. I love it.
So a whole series of it. If people are typing on the thing, then we won't get the word cloud
Yes.
here. So I'll just it's coming up now
So
as we
Kirti says
speak.
who you are and how you present yourself to the world.
I love that.
Smriti says creating a positive, Smita, sorry, says creating a positive personal image. Akshata, selling your strengths or expressing it impressively to stand out from the crowd. Lovely. Amita says creating you.
Right. I think we are getting a lot of it on the chat. So I'm just going to move on to a next question. Again, you can put it back on the chat if you don't want to do it on this. But I want to know your feel on about some of the statements that are
Some of
associated
the,
with
yeah,
personal
I
branding.
think you're getting something on top of your computer screen. There we go. So Rashik says unique story. Very nice.
Right.
So let's ask
So,
all these questions and maybe they'll just
yeah,
tell us right here whether they agree or disagree.
sure. Yeah. So, I mean, what is your feel? And these are some of the statements which we typically hear when we talk about personal branding. Personal branding is for leaders.
So let's take a
Personal
thing and
branding
let's
feels like,
yeah. People
yeah,
are
feels like
putting it.
self promotion. Personal branding dilutes the company brand. Personal branding means grooming. So these are some of the things that we hear. So I can see, again, a lot of it coming out on the screen for Menti. Skewed towards, yes, it seems to be for leaders. I'm very happy to see the lowest scores on the self promotion because it's not about self promotion in my mind. So I'm happy to see those scores.
And
It
Pragya is
dilutes.
saying personal branding is for everyone.
Yeah. I think Bikram had put his hand up, but maybe Bikram, you can type something on the chat for us if you had a question. Personal branding is for everyone. I like it, Pragya. Yeah, thanks, Kriti, for pointing that out. So we have our own
But
opinion
what
about
is interesting here is that still people feel that personal branding means grooming, etc.
grooming. So I mean, and this is something that I really am not into. So I'm not an image consultant. So that's something that we'll have to leave out of the purview of this session. I think it's a great role and great job. It works for some people, but I'm going to focus more on personal branding for you as a person, as a wholesome thing, not just about what you wear or what how you physically present yourself. Grooming is a very small like a subset, absolutely. Now, I'm just going to move on from here. And for me, personal branding is actually a lot more than this. And it is not just on these scores or these aspects. For me, it is about a lot more about what you are as a person. And I'll tell you why. It takes me back to my time at my college in Chennai, which is Etharaj College. So, as a young college girl in 1988, so I'm dating myself. When I was studying BCom, one day, our head of the department, Dr. Nirmala Prasad, she walked into our classroom and she said, Madras Management Association is having this big conference coming and I'm looking for volunteers. I immediately put my hand up. And the conference was going to be in this place called Adya Park. It was called Adya Park at the time. It's Crown Plaza now. And it was a 5-star hotel. And that was the first time I was ever going to get into a 5-star conference room. So I went there with stars in my eyes, but my heart in my mouth. And this was one of those first times I was seeing these plush carpets, huge chandeliers, chairs, jisme both tie hote hain, and that kind of thing. I was not called there to talk or be on a panel or anything like that. My job was very basic. Just help at the registration desk, give out program details, ensure everybody has notepads and pens, that kind of work. But I got a ringside view on hearing some of the industry bigwigs who are experts in the field. And I heard, and I still remember, I probably paraphrase her, Malika Srinivasan, who's the CEO of Tafe, Tractors and Farm Equipment. She said, you don't need to have the love for money to run a business. You need to have a dream to build an institution. And I'm probably paraphrasing her after all these years, but that left a big mark on me. including wanting me to aspire to be on the cover of a business magazine. We all talk about gender pay gap a lot, but it's the network gap which really pulls people down and women disproportionately even more so. And for me, personal branding is a way to really bridge that gap. So
And I
I'm
love,
going to
I'm just going to take a couple of comments that are coming in. And I love what Lata is saying. In Delhi, personal branding is having a BMW, a Merc, or a Jaguar. So that's great. She's bringing a bit of levity. Amita says personal branding is how to attain yourself wholeheartedly. And Akansha is saying that jungle mein more nache kisne dekha. You need to put things forth. Yes.
Lovely. I love the analogies that are coming, the associations which are coming with the personal brand. So thanks for all those comments. So I want to really go on to talk about, so what is brand, and what do we think when we think about brands? So what is, let's talk about it. And Sukriti, I'm going to ask you to help me with the chat again, and I'll keep an eye on it as well. So what in your mind are some brands which come to you when I say brand? Which are the brands which come to your mind, and why do these brands stand out? So if you can share with us. Nike, Google.
Google and Zoom, because I use them all
Right,
the
yeah.
time. Pragya says Apple. Pragya says Meta. Very nice. ITC. Ashmita says Amul. Pragya says Tata. Hansa says Titan. Poonam says Tata. Madam. Very nice.
Lovely. And why
Fevicol,
do these,
Ashmita says.
yeah, please
Rashik
keep it
says
coming on the chat.
Patanjali. Pragya says Zara. Nice.
And please keep coming on the chat, but also tell for me, why do some of these brands that you mentioned, why do they stand out for you? What's about the brand that stands out for you? Clear positioning, very nice, Pragya. Presentation, attractive quality, use them regularly.
I mean, I love Zoom. I tell everybody because I've tried all the different conferencing. It's the most easy to use. Dr. Vandana says Zomato. Ashmita says Amul because it's witty, it's contemporary, it's contextual. Smita says because of its quality. Amita says attraction. Rashik says because of the story that they tell. She's put a smile there. Lata says celebrity advertising. Interesting. Pragya Gulati says consistency in communicating the positioning. Hansa says Titan addresses social issues. Anushri says Apple because of status. Sneha says sustainable and continuous engagement. Sneha Reseli says quality products. Asmita says Fevicol because of humor and quality. Amita says because of fame.
Yeah, and please keep it coming on the
Trust,
chat.
value for money, quality, service, and presentation.
Great, great. Please keep those thoughts coming on the chat. And, if you think about why these brands stand out for you, is it the features? Is it the image? Is it just what they mean, the purpose that they stand for? And if you actually look at it from a very top level, for all these brands, the image is right, the message is clear, and they appeal to the right audience. That is possibly if you have to really club it all into one set of features.
Please repeat those three things again so that we actually hone those in. That what are those three things that you just said?
The image is right, the message is clear, and it appeals to the right audience. So something that defines it, and seeing that aspect of it, it draws you. And it creates a memorable positioning in your mind. So it also occupies a positioning in your wallet, the share of the wallet. And companies spend a lot of money doing this. So, Jeff Bezos this is a very famous Jeff Bezos quote: your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. I just want to twist it a little bit and say that your brands are the stories that people tell about you when you're not in the room. Today, if you think of any brand, if you think of Amul and the humor and all that, you're saying, that ad that Amul did about Will Smith and Chris Rock, what a great ad. This is the kind of conversation that we will have. So it is not just what they say, but the stories that they say about you when you're not in the room. And I want to bring on a few brands. I know you talked about a whole lot of iconic brands. I want to just shift gears a little bit and bring on a few brands. And when I talk about the brands, I want you to write on the chat what are some of the adjectives that come to your mind when you look at these brands. So the first brand that I'm going to talk about is Mumbai Police's Twitter account. And if you have noticed the Twitter account started around December 2015. And two people who played a very key role in starting that account was Ahmed Javed, who was Mumbai's Commissioner of Police at that time, and Devin Bharti, who was the Joint Commissioner. And they were very clear that we want a branding which is not preachy. We don't want to police people into action, though we are the police. We want to find a way to use humor as a way to connect. So they got this big agency. Subbu is the founder of that agency called Trivone. And some of the ads, some of the tweets were iconic. People really started engaging with it. And maybe a few years back, they had about 5 million Twitter followers. It's probably 10 million now. It's that kind of a thing. So when you think of Mumbai Police as a brand, what are some of the adjectives you will associate to this brand? On trend, absolutely. Trendy, eye catchers. Pandu. Absolutely. I used to live in Bombay, so that's responsive. Must. I like that word. Must. Totally, right? Mumbai, yeah. Totally. So witty, yeah. So let's move on and look at a few quick such brands. And this is basically Malvika Iyer. What Malvika Iyer, she was born in Kumbakonam in Tamil Nadu. Her father was transferred to Rajasthan when she was very young. She spent 13 years of her early life in Bikaner, Rajasthan. And she had a very happy, tomboyish, outdoor, playful kind of a life till 2002, when there was a horrible accident and she lost both her arms and she almost lost both her legs. It was a ammunition depot which went where the accident happened, and the doctors weren't able to save her arms. They were just about able to save her legs. She had to go through skin grafting. It was like a long, tedious process of recovery. And this was around in December 2003. That was the time she was appearing for her 10th board exams. She had missed so much of the school, but she managed to stay in touch with her friends in Bikaner. They found a coaching center in Chennai, and she had just 3 months to prepare. She studied hard and she got a state rank. First among one of the state toppers, and she got a state rank among all the private students who attended. She was invited to Rashtrapati Bhavan to meet Dr. Abdul Kalam. She went on to study social work. She got a doctorate in social work. And today, other than the numerous speeches and other things that she has done, she's also was invited to co-chair World Economic Forum Summit. She works and she was invited in 2020 by the Prime Minister to handle his social media accounts, which was a rare honor which was given to a few women. Now, when you look at Malvika Iyer as a brand, what are some of the words that come to your mind? Inspirational, perseverance, not giving up, resilient, anti-fragile. Yes, Pragya. Grit, brave heart. Absolutely. So, fire, commitment, amazing. Yeah. And keep those thoughts coming. I just want to talk about, one another person or maybe a couple of others. So this is, some of you might know about these people, some of you may not. These are Neetu Yadav and Kirti Jangra, who are the founders of Animal. Now, both of them studied in IIT Delhi. And when they were there, they were roommates and they became friends, and they decided to really go beyond what they studied at IIT Delhi. And they started this trading app for trading animals in their villages, in the remote places in UP and all that. That's where they wanted to be based. They started this. Now, everybody, when they started, everybody told them, ये क्या आईआईटी में पढ़ के अभी गाय बेन्स के पीछे पढ़ोगे? व्हाट आर यू डूइंग? आई मीन, इज दिस व्हाट वी सेंट यू टू आईआईटी फॉर? And these were her parents, who were traditionally agriculturalists and farmers, who still ask them these questions. But they said, this is what we want to do. We want to be in our community and we want to make a difference. So if you were to think about Neetu and Kirti as brands, what are some of the adjectives that will come to your mind? Making a difference, daredevil, nothing. Risk takers, mavericks. Yes. Social, just do it. I love that. And see, we are associating some other brand to this brand because that brand also has a catchy phrasing, right? Out of the box thinking, different league altogether. Lovely. I love the choice of words and enterprising. Beautiful choice of words, everyone. Go for it. Let's just turn a little bit and let's look at another brand. We all are used to looking at people who are like, in all these lists, 30 under 30, 40 under 40, women icons and all that. I want to introduce a totally different brand. This is 44-year-old Ganga Devi Gujar. She is a partner with Cry in Ajmer. And she's one of the women icons who's been nominated for Women's Day coverage. What is special about her? Really nothing in some ways, but she did an amazing thing. She took her 10th standard board exams at 44 and she went on to do it for a particular reason. Now, she's not there in the list because she topped it with 99.99% marks or anything like that. In fact, she didn't even pass. She's on that women's list because of her, 3 other young girls who were married young and who wouldn't have otherwise been able to take these exams took the exams. The only reason those 3 other girls were able to take the exams were that the girls' families allowed them to go to this board exam because Ganga ma'am was on this journey with them. So she said, I will do the whole 9 yards. I'll go through all the classes. I'll study with them and I'll go for the exams. And what is also actually amazing is that all 4 of them failed. But they're determined to study, work hard, and pass next year. So Ganga is an icon not because she decided to study at 44, which is itself is amazing, but she did it for these girls. She did it because these child brides who were there wouldn't have got this opportunity otherwise. So if you look at Ganga as a brand, what is that adjective that comes to your mind? Catalyst. Age is just a number. Go for it. Change maker. Yes, Sukriti.
Sacrifice. Smita says inspiration. Dr. Vandana says role model. Akansha says driving force. Neha says risk taker. She seems fierce also when I look at this picture. I mean, just looking at the picture.
Chin up, right? Chin up. Feels so determined, right? To make it amazing. And I mean, there are so many such people like that, but I'm just going to move on to ask you to think about all these people that we talked about. We all have a brand, even though we may not have thought about it. And people look at us and they acknowledge and attribute some adjective to us. You're called kind, you're called knowledgeable, you're called purpose-driven, competitive, considerate, poor in time management, argumentative, and sometimes some of these adjectives do more harm than good. And hearing about yourself from others allows you to look at yourself from a different perspective. So from our perspective, we might be thinking we've done all the right things. Great work history, I've got a great CV, I've got the experience, I've got good shoes, whatever, But our audience may not know that we are even there. So when you look at it from a branding perspective, and I'm just going to, you are the CEO of your own brand and the brand is Me Limited. So what are the features you want to highlight? Who's the target audience you want to look at? Which of the features you want to highlight to your audience? That becomes important. And it could be employers, it could be customers, it could be your friends. whatever it is that you want to, what are your marketing efforts? What are your outputs? It could be a CV, it could be a blog, it could be a social media profile, it could be what you wear and your body language too. So there is that, we talked about image being some part of it. It is all that. What you say and how you say it. All this really drives your branding. So just like you can actually navigate it, you have a gaming controller. And if you had a gaming controller and you can work your way through a maze like a game, you can control your brand to arrive at the right image. And I'm going to stop here for a minute and put myself on a spot. So Sukirti, you're going to help me with the charts when, really, really nice. It should be me unlimited. I love that, Lata. I love that reframing. I'm going to note that down. Me unlimited. Totally. So when I talked initially, and when I talked to you about, Madras Management Association and my life in the college, what are some of the things that you thought about me as a person? What are some of the adjectives that came to your mind? And please feel free. It's a safe group. You could write anything you want.
Yes, says simple and humble. Akshata says confident. I would have said go-getter because it's actually at that age, it's very tough to raise your hand. Sneha says learner. Kritika says enthusiastic.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, storyteller. Thank you, Vandana. I'm happy now. So, what happens when you actually, oh, thank you, Lata. So what happens when you actually introduce yourself, when you first meet somebody? What if I had, instead of talking about that incident, I said, I am Soundari, I'm simple and humble, I'm confident, I'm a go-getter, I'm a learner, I'm enthusiastic, and so on and so forth. I can't even bear to repeat it, but what if I introduce myself like that? What is that going to make you think of me as a person?
Pompous.
Pompous. Yes, absolutely. Narcissistic. Totally.
Boring, Lata says.
But a lot of the times, this is how we introduce ourselves, right? We give a list of credentials of who we are as a person instead of letting the audience find out about your character. So this is the first thing that I want to leave you with. When you introduce yourself, instead of saying what you do for a living, can you reframe and talk about some incident that happened which shows you for who you are as a person? And that might require some digging, some conscious thought to think about it and brand yourself. But just think how much better it sounds. So you let the audience derive an opinion about you by themselves. You don't need to get braggy and say that. The audience will relate and find out more about you. They will get curious. They will find out about you. So never give a list of credentials. That's boring. Nobody wants to hear a list of credentials. Think about, even when you go on a work networking event, say for instance, don't say what you do for a living. Talk about the time when you made a difference at work and why you are connected to that job. So just reframe that in your mind and use that as a way of introduction. And that makes it so much more powerful. And it lets the character come out on its own without you having to be pretentious about it. So we always say,
I'm going to ask a question here, because usually when
Yes.
you're at networking events, the first thing everybody wants to know is which company you work for or what you're doing. That's kind of like the most obvious go-to. And even if you don't answer it, they'll come back to that question.
Yeah, totally. I do want to know, like anybody who is here, I do want to know where they are. But we are leading the conversation. We have this unique opportunity to shape a perception of somebody about us. Yes, the top line might be important, but can you then go on, instead of saying, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, we all do a list of even our degrees, right? I've done BCom, I did cost accounting, I did my MBA and all that. I mean, instead of going into that list, can you immediately introduce yourself? I am so-and-so from so-and-so. A few years back when I was working in the oil and gas industry, something happened and that totally changed my perception about how we can make a difference from the environmental perspective, which is why I now work at Shell. so I can go inside and be the change that I want to see. And I'm just giving an example. It could be for different industries and it come out very differently. And I'm sure there's a lot more coming on the chat. Sukriti, so if there's anything, please flag it for
Yes,
me.
so no, Halima is also asking, Sundari, could you give us an example of introducing ourselves with a story?
Yeah. So which is just what I said, just talking about what drives your passion to be what it is. So, like, say, for instance, even my example of the MMA story, which is why I'm committed to work on personal branding and help others create a brand for themselves, because women are disproportionately ignored when they don't have a brand. It could be that. I'm just rephrasing. I don't want to repeat that whole example again. Or what I said about Shell and why we are interested in energy conservation, why we are interested in the sustainability space, right? So
So
bring your why.
as we will bring our why, we also need to know how do we pronounce your name correctly. Is it Sundari or Sundari?
Soundari.
So
So in all their
excellent.
wisdom,
I want to dig a little bit deeper into that, because I think that is where most people get perplexed. And when we think about it, these stories are also very short. They're not very long in nature.
which is because we are at work. We are not at a bar with our friends that somebody will endlessly listen to us. When you're busy at work, when you're having a high stake conversation at work, when you're like in a social setting, but from the work context, people have limited time. And we talk about this all the time. And one of the crucial things about story, three things, and I'll make it easy to remember. Stories help in getting attention, cutting through the noise and help getting attention. Stories help in comprehension. So when you share a story about yourself, you never use complicated jargon. You never say things like, I'm interested in the hardware and the software of this and that and all that. You actually narrate an incident, which traditionally in a story format, we always keep it simple. We don't use jargons. So that helps with the comprehension. And more importantly, it helps with the retention. So if you have to remember car, comprehension, attention, retention. And that's very important, because you're not just introducing yourself as a person in a group. Maybe you're, just for example, when you're doing B2B sales and you're presenting, sometimes you're with a decision maker, sometimes you're with somebody who's going to carry your story to a decision maker. You want that person to remember and retell that incident the same way that you told them. So you're leaving that footprint with them, and stories help you do that.
So Amita is asking, can you please give us an introduction in a nutshell? We would love to hear yours.
Sure. So, in the 90s, when I used to work with ANZ, I was doing my branch manager work, and a lot of the work was around domain knowledge. But as I grew up in the organization, I more and more realized that it's all about people and engaging with the people. So when I started exploring where can I work more in that area, I have a finance background, where can I work more in that area? I came upon storytelling as a way to really create that engagement, create the connect, find a way to influence and inspire action. So my whole BHAG is about helping leaders and team do just that.
Well, thank
A
you.
quick version.
So Lata is saying, at a bar, everyone is talking and no one is listening. They only think everyone is listening. And Pragya says, I think networking is overrated and personal branding is underrated.
I love all these reframes. I'm going to save the chats and read through them again later, because I think there are gems of wisdom here. There is no, and I always believe that there is nobody who's doing this or who's an expert. All of us are learners here, and which is also why I love your platform, because the audience really interacts and you learn so much from the interaction. So thank you so much for each and every comment. I'm going to definitely look through each of them again after the session as well.
So Prasanna, if you have a question, please do write it down. And I don't know if we have time, but Soundari, can we ask somebody if they'd like to share their story? Would love to hear one if somebody would like to share theirs.
Yeah,
So
sure.
please
I'd
do
like to
raise
hear
your
that.
hand. As we continue, we will unmute you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm going to really move into a little bit of the toolkit part of it on how do you create your personal brand statement. So normally if it was a workshop, we would have a lot more time and you can actually create it and send it and we can workshop it. I'm just going to give some top line things for you to remember. And the first starting point is about your brand values. So when you look at yourself, think of some three adjectives. We wrote a lot of objectives about the people that we saw before, and you gave some amazing objectives for me, which I can use later. But think of three adjectives which you want to embody for yourself, and you want to shape how people perceive you. The two caveats I will always say is they should be true. It's not just an aspirational thing, they should be true. Because we are talking about who you are. It doesn't matter what else there is. And the other thing is it should be of value to you or your organization, depending upon what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're on your own, if you're a homemaker, you're working at an organization, you're an entrepreneur. It should be of value to you. Those key three words. So frame those
Soundari, would you
words.
have different ones for your organization and different ones for your personal life?
I have the same ones because, again, I believe that you bring your whole self into anything that you do. So if I say that my values are honesty, curiosity, then that's going to be with me through. So you might pick and choose to highlight one of the values more in a certain context and in another context. But I think the core values pretty much remain the same, and it need not be restricted to three. It could be 10 core values that you have, right? Three is really small in terms of you. Nobody will have just three values. You'll probably have even 10 or 20 values that connect with you. Some of it will come to highlight in certain situations. Does that make sense, Sukriti?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Pragya is sharing creativity, freedom, and impact are the three values that she associates with. But I like the fact that you're forcing us to drill it down to 3 or 5. The reason being is otherwise we have such a huge list. And when we have such a huge list, it's very difficult to say then what is your brand? Because these brands that are, they're very purposeful and they can write their whole brand statement in 2 lines, right?
2 lines, exactly. We are talking about 3 word brand statements, right? So we are almost looking at something like that. So what I want you to lead up and keep this aside, please keep it, putting it on the chat, but keep this aside. And then I want to move out to you creating what is your billboard statement. What is that statement about you which will call out, which will be that big thing? Spruce up the elements which define you, why people remember you, and keep it engaging, one of a kind, memorable for you. Again, I'm bringing it back to what it is for you. So say, for instance, it could be, I want to be known for dash so that I can deliver dash. And the so that is important because it forces you to put yourself in an audience orientation. Otherwise, why should the audience listen to you, right? I want to be known for being a great friend so that I can be there with my friend and be kind, be caring. So you can use any of the adjectives that you use. It can be in a personal situation, it can be in a professional situation, and I've already shared mine. So this is my personal brand statement. I help, and I want to lead with the helping, because I think it's all about really about giving, sharing, and I see that happening today in the platform. So much richness of information, right, Sukriti? So I'm going to go back to the
please read it, because that would be nice, just go back and read it.
Yeah, I want to be, so I'm just leaving it for people. I want to be known for dash so that I can deliver dash. And in my case, I help leaders and teams drive business outcomes. And this is important because people want to know why they need to engage with you. They need to engage because you're driving business outcomes, and that orientation is for them. It's not what you do, it is how it impacts them. Build a personal brand and be more human at work through storytelling. So I'm bringing in what I bring to the table. I bring in the storytelling skill to the table. So I bring that in. So I want to highlight that. But I want to orient it from the point of view of the audience. What is it that the audience is looking for? And once you have these 2 statements, values, and your thing, you can structure it to create your vision, impact, network, presence. And I'm just going to give a few examples from my context on how do you define your expertise and build your skills. So my whole journey into storytelling. It was about knowing myself, what excites me, what bothers me, what people are saying you're good at, and what you're able to do with minimum effort for maximum results. And more importantly, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What really makes you get up and go and do that? So think about it from that framing. And then you have your values, you have your brand statement that sort of is your narrative and your elevator pitch. Think about what are your points of difference. And for me, again, in the storytelling whole thing, I started talking a lot about storytelling everywhere on LinkedIn, everything. And as I start reading, stories stand out for me everywhere. All the examples that I shared today are all things that we might have seen. Very nice example, for instance, recently Arnold Schwarzenegger did a video showing his support to Russia. And that, if you haven't seen, is a classic, excellent example of what storytelling is. On starting with the why of why people should listen to him. He talks about his time in Russia and the connection and all. I won't describe it now. You should listen to it and he really brings that in. So then people what was happening with me is that the more I talked about it, people started tagging me on all storytelling posts. My friends started WhatsApping me and giving me. And just like now, how we have such a sharing community, people started pointing content to me. And without having to do much, I was getting content also coming my way and I was learning in the process. Right? Today we are in an information overload place, right? Content is rich. But I was getting curated content coming my way because people knew I'm working on it. So cut out the jargon and look at how can you really maintain a consistent image. So Kirti, to your thing about the values are consistent, whether you're at work or in person. And we talk about bringing whole self to work and all these all become jargons otherwise, if you don't tie those two in. And for people who are looking at entrepreneurs or people who worked in corporate, who have taken a break, you're going today into another role, into a new entrepreneurship space, reintroduce yourself. Because maybe people know of you in a certain avatar. Now you are this metaverse avatar today.
It's people need to know what's the difference. Saying. Because today our images are also defined by what we write on LinkedIn and what we write on Instagram and the way that we present ourselves in the metaverse, which is very, very basic right now. But it's or even the picture that we choose to represent ourselves.
Totally. Everything is part of branding. It's a full package. And I'll talk a little bit more about it as we are going along. And come and share your point of view. Yes.
That P. Radhakrishnan has asked, typically when you start with exchanging business cards, let us say I'm working in an industry, say start is I am passionate about XXX industry, that is why I'm here. How does it help in building the brand you are?
Because you're trying to, if you go to a networking event, and glad you brought that example, then you're getting a wad of cards, right? And you're coming back with a wad of cards. In the days where you were meeting people and getting a wad of cards, today it's all immediate LinkedIn requests going. And people then go through, if it is LinkedIn or a visiting card, people then go through. So now when you have 10 people coming and introducing themselves and talking about, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, just that one line where you used your personal passion to say what drove you makes you stand apart. You trigger a curiosity in the other person and you say, oh, let me go and look up that person on LinkedIn. And then you go and do that, then you connect in the conversation. And this has happened so many times to me. I was on other platforms sharing some information about, we were having a chat on taking ownership. I posted this on another group saying, I'd like to hear from HR folks. What are your thoughts on it? How is it working for you in the organization? And I had a lot of one-on-one messages coming because people say, oh, this person is doing this work and that sounds interesting. And you're asking a question on how it relates to their work. You're not saying I'm the person who knows it all and who's come here. You're saying, how is it relevant to your work? And they want to share. When you ask people questions, they want to talk about themselves, they want to share. Then do you listen? And that is becoming a difficulty these days, definitely. Like say in this platform now with so many chats coming, sometimes maybe you don't, which is why I'm requesting a download of the chat for me to go back later and actually look at it. And if you consciously take that time and look at connecting, and I'll talk again a little bit more about it. Now, come and share your point of view and worth. And I see this chat is buzzing. So, obviously, people are creating a brand for themselves right here, right? You're really looking at your mind. You're not thinking, you're not feeling judged. You're not thinking, do I have a point of view to say? Should I share it here? All those, negative affirmation are all gone. You come and say, this is what I feel. And you're being yourself. And maybe I didn't do a lot of this when my initial stages at work. I did put my head down a little bit more and kept on working. But now the times are different. Right now, even whether you're in your starting stage of work or not, it's nice to have a voice. And as employees, we're talking about, Gallup poll talked about 20% of the employees only being engaged. And one of the things that drives engagement is whether your voice is being heard in the organization. So for your voice to be heard, you need to raise the voice as well. And not go so much with all these vanity metrics. Again, I love posting on LinkedIn. I'm regular, not regular, I don't know, but I don't keep looking at how many likes, how many followers, how many shares. Don't go for those vanity metrics. Look at how you can really connect with people. Go beyond that. It might be important to drive marketing, especially for entrepreneurs, platforms and all that. It is important, but don't go stop at just that. If you have, go at your content and go at a personal touch. So there's this really interesting thing about Scott Galloway, who's a lot of people would have heard about him. He's a professor of marketing, and of course he's a big time public speaker, a lot of opinions about a lot of things. He talks about round the clock brand building, round the clock model. And if you look at a particular brand, if you look at it from a brand point of view, not a person point of view, he builds it up into 3 stages. There's a pre-purchase stage where you have touch points like TV, social media, your website and all there. Then at the purchase stage, you have your distribution, your packaging, the content that you deliver. And at the post-purchase, you have your loyalty programs, the customer service. So every touch point is an opportunity for you to build your brand into something amazing. And we need to view of ourselves also like that. Every interaction is a chance to build a brand. And it is round the clock today, and we just have to acknowledge it. That's the way it is. If you don't want to engage also, it's fine. You don't need to do it. And to that point, I want to highlight, Seth Godin talks about, choosing your Jonases wisely. We all sometimes try to keep up with the Jonases. Oh, they are doing this, they are doing that, the next flashy thing, what can we do? And we fall into the trap of running after what others are doing rather than actually curating and creating content for ourselves. You don't need to make those comparisons. And when you try to keep up with the Jonases, you're going to just drive yourself nuts and have a burnout rather than look at forcing yourself to create a quality content for yourself. And we get brainwashed in some of this. So Kirti, I want to quickly stop and ask, is there anything else in the chat that's coming up?
Pragya's saying psychological safety, a lot of that also drives us.
Totally. Absolutely. At work, the clear expectations about what we are asked to do. I think in that the communication has become very key during pandemic. You need that clear expectation set. You want autonomy, you want belonging, and you want that psychological safety. Great point, Pragya. And I would say that go beyond all that. A lot of you would have seen the skip ad button in YouTube videos and everything else. People will think about what interests them. So invest in relationships and connect in person, as much in person as you can. Otherwise, people will skip ad you. You're not important enough because there are so many others in the thing. And I'm not dismissing people. I'm just saying invest in relationships. Don't just look at, this call, it's transactional. Go beyond it. Connect in person as much as possible to unlock opportunities. Think about how it can help you and go proactively. So there's a 3-step thing that I use, which is give, share, help. Give your time and attention, your expertise, your coaching, your mentoring. So I'm a mentor in so many multiple platforms. And I think sometimes it's also because I don't know to say no. So that's something that I have to work on myself. but give generously. Share articles, share resources, share books, share blog posts, podcasts, your thoughts, your expertise. Share your successes and share your failures. We won't get it right. It doesn't matter. People will learn from it. Help others, help people wherever you can. And I do believe that, what goes around comes around. So look at some of this. We have very less time, so there's another video. So Sukirti, if I can share this video with
I
you.
would, if possible, we'll just post it because I'd love to take some audience
Yes,
questions.
yes. So let me just, I'm going to skip this video, which is Daniel Medvedev talking in the Australian Open. Remind me, and I will share it to you after the session. What all these productive accidents has done is given me opportunities to actually connect with people in different parts of the world, as we are here today as well. And when you go in with the thing of giving, sharing, helping, things come back your way for sure. And Roosevelt talks about, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So building a brand and influencing is not only about showing up as you, who you are, it's also about finding out about who others are. And you can do this in 2 simple steps. Ask people questions about themselves. And step 2, listen to their answers. If you
Most
show
difficult
genuine
part.
interest,
The listening part.
listening part. And business storytelling can be an amazing way to just create your great personal brand, to engage, to inspire, to influence. There's this very cute saying which a friend of mine mentioned. It is by Andy Goodman. It says, numbers numb, jargons jar. No one marched on Washington because of a pie chart. We really are, data is important, but it's the stories which drive the insights around the data, which really, it's like almost like the ice cream that you put on top of a brownie. It makes the difference. And in workplace, it helps build authentic connections. It drives the quality of your conversations. So bring a new dimension to yourself. This is again another video which I'll share. This is a quick recap of some of the things that we talked about doing your own thing, investing in relationships, reframe your think about what is potential, ask and listen, use storytelling at work, bring your whole self. And the whole thing on brand building, what we talked about round the clock, is think about your brand from day one. And branding manifests itself in everything that you do. So live your brand every day, bring a new dimension to whatever you do. Normally people say ikigai, don't ask ask what the world wants and where is the intersection. That's a great concept, but I would just reframe it a little bit to say, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and then go for it, because world needs more people who make it come alive. And choose your own path. Antonio Machado, this poem I absolutely love. Travelers, there is no path. The path is made by walking. So you make your own path, you be yourself, and create your personal brand and have a life that you want to live, inspiring others. So I'll stop here for now. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn and on Twitter. I'll leave the contact details with Sukirti, along with some of the videos on storytelling as well. And I'd love to hear from the audience.
Smita, go ahead. We'd love to take your question first. And anybody else that has questions, please do raise your hand or put it in the chat box.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Sukirti, I'm not able to switch on my camera, so sorry for that.
No worries.
I think you blocked it, or I don't know. I'm not able to do it.
No, sorry, we've not blocked.
You cannot start your video because host has stopped it itself.
Okay.
Anyways, I'll go ahead with my question. Soundari, I hope I've got the name right.
Yeah, absolutely, Smita. Lovely to connect with you. Thank you.
It was a pleasure, listening to you. But I am slightly disconnected because, I had a boss who used to tell me that, never be yourself because you will be very predictable. I am one person who's very spontaneous, and while I was in the team member role, it was fine. But when I, had a team under me, so this was the advice she gave me once, that you are so predictable and you are so, honest with people. And she said, this doesn't work in a corporate. So she actually wanted me to not be myself. So what is your take on that? I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks, Smita. Thanks for asking that question. I think it's all the question is making me think, and I don't know the full context, and we may not have the time to ask you those questions to find out the full context. There's this thing about when you say bring your whole self. I always add another caveat in this context is bring your whole relevant self. So it is situational, definitely. I think we are what we are. I am a direct person. For me, a lot of things are very black and white. I struggle with the grace. So that is me as a person. If you set the tone with your team to say, this is how, just for example, let's say you're giving feedback. And maybe this context in the sense of, oh, you're giving too direct feedback. Try to think about how you can reframe it to say, this is what I mean by when I give feedback, this is how I do it. To set the context of how you give feedback and then share it, so people are then on the same page and aligned. And when they still come back to you and say, oh, that sounded very, I'm sure it was not rude, but if they say that sounded too direct or rude or whatever, think about how you can reframe it so you communicate in a way that is suitable for them and it's useful for them. Ultimately, your objective is to get your team to align with you.
True.
So I look at it as a communication thing rather than changing your personality thing.
Maybe. Thank you for that.
I hope it helped. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Smita. Thanks for asking that.
Any other questions? Would love to take some more if there are some. Otherwise, we will ask Soundari for her closing remarks, and we'll wish everyone a great night. And think
I
about
see some familiar
branding.
faces. Yeah, I see some familiar faces on the chat in the group now. Hi, Hema, and hi, Deepika. Lovely to see that you joined us today.
So I think we've covered the topic. So any closing remarks that you would have?
I think, hi, Deepika. I think we all can be ourselves and our brand. Sometimes when we use jargons like bring your authentic self and all, we tend to get overwhelmed by what we are saying. We see people who are saying, oh, be authentic. And then we see that there's a disconnect because they're not necessarily walking the talk or walking the walk on it. We can be that difference, we can make that change and bring that in. And today, communication in an online remote world, communicating to achieve and maintain alignment among the stakeholders, cascading your message across the organization becomes very important. And you can do that by creating a brand for yourself and bringing that new dimension to your organization, to your workplace, to wherever you go. You will leave those footprints in the sands of time that way.
So Pragya is asking, Pragya, I would I've asked to unmute you so you could ask it yourself, that if you were to time travel, do you regret not knowing or doing something you should have done 30 years ago?
I'm not a person who believes in regrets. I think all decisions are valid when they are taken, and I don't have any post-purchase dissonance and all that at all ever. I think any thing in retrospect always looks, oh, if I had known that, that would have been great. But we don't know that, right? And today, as we are seeing, we are taking decisions for the future based on something that happened in the past, and the past is not representative of it. I think you just learn from it, but you live the life in the moment. That's me.
So certain judgments I'm making about you as I'm looking at your bookshelf. I see you love to travel. So that's the first judgment on personal branding that I'm making about you. Prasanna, go ahead. I'm just going to ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Thanks, Pragya, for asking that. Yeah, I hear that it was noisy there and you couldn't talk.
Hi, Soundari. That was a
Hi,
wonderful
Prasanna.
session. Very
Thank
nice
you.
inputs. I just had a query. Actually, yesterday I had got an offer. I'm actually into academics now, but suddenly I got an offer in industry where I was working 5 years back as HR. So how do I consider myself as same deliverables like I give on par to my counterparts who is in the same line without having any shift? Or I'm having a shift from academics to industry, so I should quote my salary little less than what my counterparts are getting.
Okay. tough question on, so I don't know about your industry and what is the benchmarking, whether you've looked at Glassdoor and all that. So I'm not getting into those nitty gritties. I think you are bringing a dimension which a lot of others may not be bringing. We talk about, typically people talk about T-shaped leadership, which is
True.
like you go deep into a domain and you have an overarching area. But today is the time of M-shaped. So you have a lot of deep inputs in certain areas, and how you're able to connect the dots across all this is the strength that you're bringing. So sometimes it's great to be audacious, and ask for that bigger number. Go for it. You are bringing so much value, which maybe a person who has just been in the industry is not bringing. I hope, yeah. Thanks, Prasanna. Thanks for asking that.
Well, thank you, everyone. Like I said, I mean, I hope you all will think about those 3 adjectives that define you and kind of work towards that, because it's very, very important. I'm also thinking about that. Like I said, I'm one that has probably written now already 20. So narrowing down to those 3 to 5 will be the tough part for me. So with that, we wish you all a very, very good night. And thank you, Soundari, for being with us. And like I said, I'm loving the travel, and I hope that that comes back soon.
Thank you so much.
It was a great session. Thank you so much for this. Smita says, thank you so much, ma'am. Smita says,
thank you all so much. Yeah, and thanks to your team as well, to people, the background organizing everything as well, Sukriti. And I absolutely enjoyed. I know we wanted to do this earlier. I'm glad we finally did this session. Thank you so much. And thanks for the great participation. I mean, any session comes alive, and the fire is there in the session only when people participate. So thanks so much for that.
Thank you all. Have a good night.